Greetings and a warm welcome from me, astrologer Patrick Arundell. Today, in the latest of my deep dive videos, I'm going to explore the Virgo harvest new moon, which occurs across the 14th or the 15th of September 2023, depending on where we are, and at 21 degrees and 58 minutes in Virgo, which is in the third decan, which has a sub-rulership of Venus. And that's interesting because this event does see the sun and the moon arcing towards Uranus in the sign of Taurus, which of course is ruled by Venus. Now I'm just going to share with you how I'm going to structure the video. I will share with you on screen the exact time this occurs and date across all the big cities of the world. Briefly tell you about what is a new moon, what can we expect from a Virgo new moon. The glyph of this sign is the Virgin holding the sheaf of wheat. So although North Indian culture may relate to this event as a harvest, it's also a harvest new moon for the whole of the Northern Hemisphere. But then I'm going to share with you, after I go through the themes of Virgo, what makes this particular Virgo new moon so unique, not least that angle to Uranus and that sub-rulership of Venus. But then I'll share with you the event chart as well, because we can see exactly what houses the sun and the moon are in, and also what Uranus is in. And then, so we can all relate to this event collectively, the solar event chart. Then I'll go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour of what you can expect over the following 4 weeks from this event. So right through to the middle of October. If you are new to my channel, thank you so much for joining us. This is very much a community. And if you have any thoughts, please share them. I do try to interact with each comment. If you're a returning visitor or a subscriber, it's great to have you with me once more. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. But if you are new here, your subscription, a like or a comment, please do take part. And if you would like to subscribe, please click or tap on the bell notification symbol so you get an alert every time I drop a video. Now I'd just like to tell you about a very exciting opportunity. You can watch your free year 2024 in-depth astrology and horoscope forecast for each of the 12 zodiac signs, a standalone video, by clicking on the link beneath this video. But if you would like to order your year 2024 personal horoscope forecast based on your unique birth data, you can do so now, and I will prepare for you the rest of this year free. And also my special package of 30% off, you'll get your character analysis report, your life roadmap, which will give you intimate understanding of the patterns that have played out in your life so far and how to work with them in a more appropriate way going forwards, particularly the more challenging ones. Please see the link beneath this video for more. So the Virgo harvest new moon at 21 degrees and 58 minutes occurs on the 15th of September in terms of Universal Central Time, and at 1:39 a.m. based on Greenwich. But if you're based elsewhere in the world, please see on the screen now where this event occurs for you and at what time. Now let's just think about briefly what is a new moon. It's when the sun and the moon are merged together as we see it from planet Earth. The sun's very much about the more masculine side of the situation, nothing to do with gender, more sexual orientation. We all have a balance of a get-go and more receptive energies in our nature, and we need both. Now the moon is much more about security, nurture, our need for protection, whereas the sun's very much about action and making things happen. So when they're together in a new moon, the energy is perfectly aligned. So they're integrated. It's a much more holistic event, whereas a full moon is a much more potentially antagonistic event, much harder to integrate the two very different energies. So the new moon happens in each zodiac sign once a year. So what is a Virgo new moon? Well, let's just think about some of the themes of Virgo. Can be very much to do with precision, being virtuous, and anything to do with our physical health. So if we can be discriminating over the next month in terms of what we're eating and drinking, becoming much more conscious of nutrients and our intake, trying to cook things from scratch, that's all a really good thing. But also Virgo can be very much caught up in terms of providing services, so it can be about the actual structure of the role we carry out in terms of a job, but it's also about our responsibilities, our obligations, and our focus. And many people who have strong Virgos in their chart are involved in food distribution, food preparation, working within supermarkets, or in healthcare, or someone who could be a nutritionist, a herbalist, someone who's very interested in the physical side of natural health. But also, in terms of our own responsibility, our personal care and sanitation. And in a broader sense, it can also have a great influence in terms of our love of pets and our connections with our aunts and uncles. Now, in terms of that glyph, the Virgin, the virtue of the sign of Virgo, very much about discrimination. So it can be about analysing the details to see where we can make small but meaningful improvements that give us a tangible benefit, because it's an earth sign. It wants to see something that comes out of the process that is substantive. And of course, it's this time of the year in the northern hemisphere when we're reaping the harvest. And of course, the planting goes on in the spring, which starts with the sign of Aries. But the sign of Taurus, also an earth sign, is when the seed starts to get rooted, and the weather hopefully, usually, starts to improve a little bit through the sign of Taurus in the northern hemisphere. And so what we're getting now, we're reaping the harvest. So this is something that's very strongly threaded in to the whole Mediterranean themes of Western tropical astrology. So what makes this particular Virgo new moon so different? Well, it is the role of Uranus, because it's in the sign of Taurus. This particular lunation occurs in the third decan, as I mentioned before, so therefore that's a Venusian influence, so very much coming from its Taurus rulership, food. And one of the big topics that's coming up a lot in Britain at the moment is ultra processed food. So a lot of people, because they're very mindful of the welfare of animals, have converted to vegetarianism and veganism in recent years. And that's very noble. I was a vegetarian for 47 years. But it's also important to understand some of the things that are being sold, because we still want convenience. We can still be rather tired after a hard day, and that makes us tempted towards, say, a meat-free option, which we feel provides that protectiveness to those animals, but it's not necessarily a very good item in terms of the calories, the fats, but also all the processes that go into mulching and melding something into looking like it's something that might be appetizing. And of course all the subliminal advertising, like made by hand or curated in Scotland, or all these kind of things that marketeers use, are very seductive. So one of the things that I feel that this particular new moon is asking us to do is to cut through and understand the truth of what's going on around food production. Now, it could also be that you feel very strongly, like I do, about the transportation of animals and stock crammed into lorries without very little space, may not be given any water over quite a long journey. These kind of things are quite abhorrent to a lot of us too. So we can become more conscious of these kind of things. They may not be very sexy topics, but ultra processed foods is something we could all think about in our diet. So where can we make some amendments to improve things? So for example, if you enjoy some pizza, why not make a base from scratch, do all the preparation ourselves. Probably a much nicer option, might take 10 minutes longer, but much better for our digestion. So I think what Uranus is asking it to do, because it's the planet of truth, is cut through the marketing and understand the reality of what we're digesting, because digesting efficiently is a very Virgoan thing. Now, of course, the sign of Virgo can be about domestic organisation and making sure everything's running smoothly, neatly, so it could be a great time to declutter. Uranus can be about space, get more organised, recycle something, give our excess clothes to a charity shop. If we've got some food that's at the back of the cupboard that we're not using, can that go to the food bank? That would be another virtuous thing to do. So the harvest that we can reap for ourselves can be in just taking a more analytical look at our behaviour. And the other thing about this particular event, and I'm sharing the event chart on the screen now, based on Placidus and based on Greenwich. Other astrologers may use their local areas. The reason I use Greenwich is not because I'm British, it's because of the longitude being at 0 degrees. And it just so happens that the ascendant for this event is in Leo, which has a great appreciation of the good things in life, for sure. But if you look at the ruler of the sign of Virgo in the natal chart for the event, you can see that Mercury, as you know, is in a retrograde through to the 15th. It's also in the first decan of the sign of Virgo, so a double Mercury edge, but it is in an opposition with Saturn in the part of the overall collective horoscope of Pisces, so the culmination sign, but in the natal chart in the 8th house, so 2nd, 8th. So I feel that we need to do some critical thinking about how we can make better use of our budget to look after ourselves better. The actual new moon is in the 3rd house, so that can be to do with our communications. As a Gemini feel, very much in keeping with the other rulership of the sign of Mercury, of Gemini. But you can see that Uranus is in the 10th house, how we connect to the wider world. So I think we are going to see fresh stuff coming in all the time about how we can innovate, do things differently. Now it may be around some health procedures, some new technology comes in that's actually very helpful. We're all watching with bated breath about AI, but there can still be some things that can update our systems. For example, better ordered processes of distribution of medicines, for example. Or perhaps we're finding that some old approaches, such as with herbs and plants, can actually be repurposed for mass consumption in a fresh way, which is good for our systems. So I think there can be a mixture of the traditional and the modern based on this particular event, but we have to be aware that with Mercury in a retrograde and in a wideish opposition to Saturn, that not everything we want might happen quite as efficiently as we would like. So there can still be some glitches, basically, in terms of communication. But why I feel that the Uranus angle is so important is it's so tight, 2257 against 2158. So the lunation is just under 22 and the Uranus position is just about 1 degree beyond the wonderful enabling trine. But we do have Neptune more broadly in opposition with the new moon, and also Pluto is in a bit of a wider trine itself. Now I'm going to share with you on the screen now the event chart from the collective, from us all, based on the solar chart with 0 degrees Aries, the vernal point, as the 1st house. And this is interesting because you can see quite logically that collective of energy, including Mercury, all falls into house 6. So that's all together asking us to show more precision. But Saturn moves into house 12. And the interesting thing about that is, though Virgo is about the body, of physicality, being ordered, digestion, eating well, looking after ourselves, Saturn's in the most psychological part of the overall chart, and that's making us aware that we have to consider our feelings, and we can't just work in a completely practical and physical way through this Virgo energy. We have to join it all up and be holistic. So that's going to be one of the big lessons, particularly with Mercury in house 6 against Saturn in 12 in the opposition. We can't just use the energy of this new moon to innovate and analyze our practical routines, replace some trusted appliances that may be a little bit old and we need something that's a bit more efficient. We need to also consider that more spiritual, emotional and psychological domain. Now, I'm going to go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour of what you can expect for yours based on your sun or your ascendant over the following 4 weeks from the 14th or 15th of September. So Aries, for you, the next month gives you a great opportunity to drill down into the detail of your everyday finances. I feel the 6th house is about organisation, but Uranus is about your everyday money. So you can use the precision of Virgo to take a fresh look, Uranus, and perhaps a more honest look at the way that things are going in and out of your accounts, and see if you can find some economies, but also where you might see some opportunities, because Uranus can be about flair. But the other thing about the 6th house is it can be about our obligations and responsibilities to others. And with Saturn in your 12th house, in an opposition to Mercury, if someone reaches out to you, needs some support, and your heart is willing, but your body isn't quite, it is going to be important to understand that you can't pour from an empty jug. So whatever virtuous things you're trying to do at the moment, it is important that you do set yourself some realistic targets. But I feel that if you do want to declutter, sell some stuff off that you no longer need, or take a look at your cupboards to see if there are some items there that you can really be more imaginative in terms of what you can cook, that would be an opportunity too. And also, if you aren't a little bit dissatisfied in a role at the moment in terms of your work, one of the things that I think you may be craving for is a sense of satisfaction. You know, if you do a job, if you work hard, you may in some way want to make a tangible difference to other people's lives. So that may be something that can influence all this knowledge, some of your decisions over the next 4 weeks. But a fresh approach to resources, to organisation, to diet, but to your finances, but also to your work, can really generate some new freshness and new possibilities for you. So Taurus, for you, the wonderful thing about this event is that it occurs in your 5th house, which is where we can showcase our passion, our enthusiasm. We want to enjoy ourselves. Don't be surprised if your social life or even your romantic situation took a little bit of a turn over the next 4 weeks, but because Uranus in your sign is applying to the position of the moon and the sun, sub-ruled in the 3rd decan by Venus, I feel this more pleasurable part of your existence is where you can make things come to life. But it may be because it's hosted in the sign of Virgo, that it's someone you work with or meet through your everyday life or everyday world that actually you click with, get together, can go out and have some fun, and that could lead to something else. If you're someone who's particularly into crafting or a maker, you can be absolutely inspired over the next month. And also someone can discover what you're making and be very, very impressed indeed. It's just that with Mercury, the ruler of Virgo, in an opposition to Saturn in your 11th house, it wouldn't be a complete surprise if some new people were coming into your life in terms of making it more engaging and fun, and maybe some old friendships could be a little bit more stilted and not so bubbly and effervescent. So Gemini, do you remember that last 10 days of August? I feel it may have been really quite hard going, particularly around balancing a home and work issue, or people have really needed you to support them. Your role as a carer, as a protector in a family may have come very much to the fore, but it may have felt quite weighty. Or perhaps you're making some big decisions about where to live. But this new moon gives you an opportunity to springboard forwards with a great deal of extra enthusiasm. And I think one of the lovely things about having it in the third decan is that brings in the energy of Venus in the sub-rulership. And that Venus energy can be very much to do with home decoration, perhaps buying some new furnishings that just bring a greater charm and peacefulness to your immediate environs. But if you're not particularly settled with where you're living, I think this new moon can see you thinking, perhaps suddenly having a brainwave with Uranus's intervention, of some memory from your past, but making a connection in a way that could be a bit surprising, but helps to steer your moves in terms of where you want to be located going forwards, or getting a much greater understanding of some of your emotional responses and needs, because being an air sign can be a tendency to work through your mind somewhat, and this is an opportunity to be more in touch, more in tune with how you feel about things, and that can be to do with your family, about the environment, the wider environment you live in. Do you want to be somewhere buzzy, serene? Whatever suits you, that's what you're going to be looking out for over the next 4 weeks. So Cancer, for you, this event occurs in house 3, very Gemini-like. So expect a picking up at the pace of life. If you did experience towards the end of August some frustration around documentation, some kind of agreement not quite happening as quickly as you would like, there were any issues with journeying, where there may have been delays or problems or glitches, wouldn't be a complete surprise. Now this particular new moon can catapult things forwards in a much more dynamic way, perhaps not perfectly. Life's never that simple. We still have Mercury opposed by Saturn, but with Uranus in house 11, that's to do with your future. It's also to do with your friendships, and perhaps being drawn towards people who you see as being very authentic, people who cut through, maybe not the type of people who follow the crowd, people who are much more unique in the way they are. Those are the type of people that are really going to attract you, even if you're someone who's in the past been a tad more conservative. Over the next 4 weeks, you could find yourself meeting up with these exciting new people, setting some plans in motion which are going to pick up pace, and it really is going to be after that rather tiresome period of days where nothing seemed to be moving. Things now can start to gain traction in a very positive way, particularly if you're trying to showcase your ideas, train people, learn new skills yourself, or even think about a new mode of transport. So Leo, the Virgo new moon is really exciting because of that link to Uranus, which is in the part of your situation to do with how you're connecting to the wider world. Now, if you're open to using a mix of approaches, some steady Eddie ones of being very reliable, very resourceful, very persistent and consistent, that's the energy of Virgo, but also applying those strengths, but in a bit more of a varied or creative way, Uranus in your 10th house of how you connect to the wider world, progress can be made. And it could be a new job. And what I mean by that is think about a role that might be doing something different to what you have done in the past. Now, maybe there's parts of your existing skill set or experiences that can be redeployed. But if it is an opportunity that comes up that's quite a bit differently, don't dismiss it out of hand. There could be a tendency to think down your self-worth with Mercury opposed by Saturn. You may start to worry about what you can't do rather than what you can. So coach yourself into being a bit more experimental and a bit more bold, because although you radiate this very self-confident aura, underneath you don't always feel quite as sure of yourself, and also have a tendency to stick with what you know because it feels safe. But then that chokes off inspiration. Life becomes dull, boring and repetitive. We lose energy, and then we feel that we don't have the capacity to do something different. So bet on yourself, Leo, over the next 4 weeks. So Virgo, a very exciting new moon in your sign, which is sub-ruled through the third decan by Venus. So creativity, passion, desire. Venus can be about presentation, and you are given an opportunity to meld the qualities of your sign, the reliability, the precision and the attention to detail, but meld those qualities towards making something evolve in your situation that really inspires you and stimulates your passion. Because the first house is where we start things off, or it can be where we reinvigorate strands that are ongoing that maybe have lost a little bit of momentum. Now, because Uranus is in the mix, that sends you be open to be really daring. And if that means shaking things up a little bit, stepping outside your comfort zone, or not necessarily doing just what other people will be happy for you to do, but being more single-minded, then that is the real opportunity here. Now, because your ruler is opposed by Saturn, and because the last 10 days of August your physical vitality may have been quite low, I totally understand that you do and will need to be quite selective about where you put these fresh energies in, but don't necessarily expect everyone else to applaud you. This is a time to test your mettle. And if there's something you want to do that you've long wanted to do, this is your time to really supercharge it over the next 4 weeks. Now, Libra, as you know, a new moon is an opportunity to refresh, revitalize, get that balance between the feeling and the action sides of our situations. But House 12, which hosts this particular new moon for you, can be about the more imperceptible side of life. So atmospheres, things that we can't quite necessarily tangibly see. It can be about our senses and also our fears, to be honest, and our anxieties. However, we can still work with this new moon energy in a really constructive way if you can give yourself more permission to have some quiet moments over the next 4 weeks. Just check on your breathing, see where your shoulders are, embrace any kind of healing, you know, whether it's a nice massage or going to a spa day, or doing something that is cleansing to yourself, like maybe having some days of drinking lots of lovely fresh water to rinse out. Very eliminating, very 12th house, and in a way very Virgoan, because it's all about the cleanse, getting that greater sense of purity. But the 12th house can be your psychology. Where can you clean up your thinking? Is some of your reality in life coming about because, like us all, concerns creep in, especially in the last 10 days of August? I think vitality and even the more spiritual dimension of life probably felt very, very wearing, perhaps down to just too many obligations supporting other people. So this is your opportunity to bring some extra peace and tranquility to your life. But just be aware, the 12th house in traditional astrology can be about secret enemies. Is there somebody around you who's draining you, but superficially they may not be conscious of it? Or it could be someone who genuinely has not got your best interests at heart, but you need to just make sure that your boundaries, your spiritual boundaries, are just a bit more reinforced, because you're going to be soaking up things in an imperceptible way in a much more heightened fashion over the next 3 or 4 weeks. So do protect yourself. Think about how you can bring healing to your heart, but also to your passions, and also to your physical vitality as well. So Scorpio, over the last few weeks, I think you've had some big questions that you've been asking yourself really about what you want from your future, whether it's in terms of the things that really inspire you, whether it's your friendships, involvements, or perhaps even around your love life. Now, this all crystallizes those energies and gives you an opportunity to really be much more decisive about the next step forwards. And Uranus is there to help you. It's there to help you to cut through, and maybe cut through in terms of your concerns about how other people may perceive some of the things you want to do, or maybe you yourself are a little bit concerned about stepping away from certain involvements or stepping towards others. It's a very dynamic, even edgy time, but it ain't boring. So 11th house energy is very, very exciting, because it's pushing us to get in touch with what really, really gets us excited. I'm not talking about the material world here. I'm talking about beyond that. You can have, and some people obviously do, a great deal of material security, and that definitely takes away a lot of their worries, but it's the next thing up that really sparks and inspires us, that gives us that passion for life. And for many people who don't have that level of financial security, it will come through interest, it will come from associations, belief systems. The people we really like to hang out with will come potentially from our love life. So those are the things you have a fabulous opportunity to get really authentically in touch with and make some big changes and big moves over the next 4 weeks. So Sagittarius, I'd like to ask a question. During the last 10 days of August, did you find that some of the things you wanted to grapple with, particularly around work and ambitions and goals, seemed to slow down, really not be happening at the pace you wanted? Perhaps there's been some personal or home-based issues that have been somewhat of a barrier. Well, if the answer is yes, this new moon event gives you an opportunity to really reach for the stars. So I'm talking about goals and ambitions here. So if it is a new job you want, a bigger house, a nicer motor car, these are very 10th house desires. Now, because Uranus is in the mix, that brings a different twist to things, because that's very much to do with being a little different. And you might want to have your connection to the wider world, which comes from the 10th house, or this Virgo energy, much more on your own unique terms. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. In fact, that's absolutely fantastic. So the originality that's important to you still needs to find an outlet. So if you're wanting to showcase your talents, receive more recognition, get more acclaim for your talents, the next 4 weeks give you a great opportunity to do that. But I still feel there may be some issues just around the edges that you still need to deal with because of Saturn being in your 4th house of home and emotion. Perhaps, for example, part of you not entirely believing that you have the right to this greater success. And that's something that you can work on within yourself to free up the space to then create more propulsion forwards towards that big target that's important to you. So Capricorn, the last 10 days of August, I feel that there may have been some tensions around different viewpoints. If you've tried to journey anywhere, it may not have happened in the way you wanted. There may have been some frustrations or delays or snags. But I feel that this new moon is pushing you through your sister Earth sign of Virgo to actually have one more go at doing something that's really a little bit more out there, that sees you going outside your comfort zone, being more enterprising, being more daring, bringing a greater sense of spontaneity to your world. Uranus is urging you on to not be so bothered about what other people think. live your own natural way, shake things up, bring some rock and roll into your existence. That's what the opportunity is over the next few weeks. For sure, there is still going to be someone who doesn't agree and doesn't hold back from telling you, and is quite pointed, and that can actually be a little bit irritating still. But I feel that you really need some space, some adventure, and some change. And well, as always, change is as good as a rest. So Aquarius, I would say the last 10 days of August felt a little bit like a grind in terms of trying to work with whatever resources you had on an everyday basis, whether it's energy, your ideas, everyday money, but also how you interacted with others around all those areas and the responses you were getting back. So even if you were wanting to pitch in, you may have found that other people were resistant. The 8th house can be about deep transformations, can be about long-term money, pensions, legacies, wills, that type of stuff. But the new moon, of course, is an opportunity to rejuvenate, rekindle, find a spark. So something can go through a bit of a phoenix moment for you over the next 4 weeks. It may be to do with a property matter, maybe a business idea that may have stumbled, and then you'll be able to find someone who does get what you're trying to achieve. And because Uranus, your modern ruler, is in the mix, this can happen quickly, the speed of light, but it could be more of an emotional connection, even in a business context, that creates that spark. Or in a purely romantic sense, if there is somebody that you really, really are drawn to quite magnetically, the 8th house can be very difficult to resist. You know, it's very intense, but it pulls us towards something. Or does it do the opposite? Does it create a separation? And that's because Uranus is in the mix. So something big's going to change in your situation in the next 4 weeks. Exactly what it is down to you, but I feel it will. And I think at the end of the process, even if it has been a bit bruising at times, and it may not be an exactly neat and tidy affair, despite being in Virgo, I feel that you will see the merit of some kind of transformation in your situation that's deeply felt. So Pisces, for you, this new moon occurs in your sector of relating, but also where you want to set your boundaries, where you may come into contact with people you need to compete against, where you may need to be combative. The 7th house works in lots of different ways. The common theme here, though, is that Venus, where this decan, this new moon occurs in, is about relating. So I feel this is a fantastic opportunity to improve harmony, mutual understanding, sharpen up listening skills. Uranus is reaching into this, so thinking outside the box, being open to different people, fresh ideas, stimulating ways of collaborating, all gives you a great platform over the next 4 weeks. However, if you think back over the last 10 days of August, it's possible that all these things you've tried to do, but somehow or another, some kind of proverbial celestial spanner got in the works, and however much you tried, something seemed a little bit out of reach or difficult or grinding or grating. Try again now with a open approach, which comes from Uranus, and you may find that there could be a real connection that's very pleasing over the next 3 or 4 weeks. Or you can take a pre-existing friendship or connection or romantic relationship to the next level of understanding. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me. Please do like, comment, share or subscribe.